Welcome back to Rudy's Travels. Last week, we hiked all around Sedona and took day trips to the nearby Grand Canyon and Petrified Forest National Parks. In this video, we hit up most of the national parks in California and spent time with our grandson in Oakland. We started our California loop in Joshua Tree National Park, where we set up our trailer at the Black Rock Canyon Campground and had another campsite with amazing views of our surroundings. First, we headed over to the Visitor Center in downtown 29 Palms and walked around with Rudy at the Oasis of Mara Nature Trail. As with many other national parks, there are nature trails set up near the Visitor Center that are dog-friendly, and many are a microcosm of the area. We took a drive over to the West Entrance Station and continued through onto Park Boulevard, where we stopped at various trailheads and then arrived at the Boy Scout trailhead to do our solo hikes, where I stayed back with Rudy while Sharon hikes, and then we switch. The California Super Bloom was kicking into high gear, and the landscape at Joshua Tree was beautiful. Evenings at our campsite didn't disappoint either. Our next stop in California was Death Valley National Park. As we drove in on the entrance road, we could see what all the fuss was about. Death Valley was vast and magnificent. And hot. With the temperatures over 100 degrees in mid-April, we had no problem getting a campsite in the aptly named Furnace Creek Campground. After setting up, we checked out the Oasis, which was nearby. The Oasis is truly an oasis in the desert, with places to stay if you're not camping, a nice restaurant with an outdoor patio, gift shops, and happily an ice cream shop. Since it was too hot to cook at our campsite, we grabbed dinner and some cold ones in the outdoor patio. We got up early the next day and began our tour of Death Valley by heading over to Zabriskie Point, which was a dog-friendly walk with astounding views. Next, over to Badwater Road to check out the Devil's Golf Course, named as such since it is said that only the devil could play golf on its surface, due to a rough texture from the large halite salt crystal formations. We then went over to the Badwater Basin, which is an expansive salt flat and at 282 feet below sea level, the lowest point in North America. From there we headed up the mountain to Dante's View, which at 5,500 feet above sea level provides a panoramic view of the southern Death Valley Basin. It cooled off considerably, maybe by about 25 degrees, which felt great. From there, over to Golden Canyon. And then over to the multicolored Artist's Palette. Followed by a loop through the one-way scenic Artist's Drive. That night was the only time on our entire trip that I really wish we had air conditioning in the trailer, since it never really cooled off. So we decided that we would call an audible by staying only one more night, and then heading over to Las Vegas to a nice cool Airbnb for a few days. headed over again to the Oasis to cool off, then struggled through one more hot night before packing up and heading to Las Vegas the next day. On our way out, we stopped at the Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes and said goodbye to Death Valley. Las Vegas was only a couple of hours away from Death Valley, and it was well worth it. We checked out the iconic Welcome to Las Vegas sign and then drove all along the strip. Quite a culture shock from where we were just hours before. Sharon and I don't really gamble, so all we wanted to do was go to dinner and walk around. We headed to the Venetian one night for dinner and then took in the fountains at the Bellagio. And as usual in our Airbnb stays, Rudy got to chill while we went around town. Next we headed back into California to the Kings Canyon National Park. We did not have any camping reservations there, so we decided to try out a National Park Lodge experience. We stayed a few nights there in the dog-friendly John Muir Lodge, which worked out just fine. As you can see, there was still a ton of snow on the ground, quite a difference from our Death Valley experience. We headed over to a grove of sequoia trees, and in particular checked out the General Grant tree, the second largest giant sequoia tree in the world after the General Sherman tree. Later, we relaxed on the deck of the lodge. We took a day trip over to Sequoia National Park, which is right next to Kings Canyon. It was a beautiful day as we headed along the winding road down the mountain, then over to Sequoia National Park. The sequoia groves in this park were closed due to the presence of snow on the roads, but we still had a nice time hiking around the park. The super bloom was in full gear here and provided a peaceful setting. Rudy tried in vain to catch a critter that had just run into a crevice between some rocks. Our next stop was supposed to be a week in Yosemite National Park, but we received an email telling us that the campground was closed due to flooding caused by snow runoff, so we decided to check out Pinnacles National Park instead. Luckily, we got the last campsite available and settled in for a couple of days there. We did a great Rudy Swap hike the next day on the Bear Gulch Caves Trail, which was a fantastic hike through lots of talus caves that were formed when huge boulders toppled from above and wedged into the fractures before reaching the ground. At the end of the cave portion of the trail, you emerge onto a beautiful lake at the top of the mountain, and then descend outside back to the trailhead. At the top we saw many large birds, likely falcons, although condors are found in the area as well. That night we built a fire and relaxed before heading up to Oakland the next day to see our grandson Finley. When in Oakland, we got to spend a lot of time with Finley, who was about 15 months old. We also got to see Caitlin's graduation from Berkeley with her PhD in epidemiology, which made us so proud. We were even able to squeeze in a long weekend camping with Caitlin and Finley in the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park. Our plan was to stay with our daughter Caitlin and her family for a couple of months in early summer, and then begin the second half of our trip, traveling through the Pacific Northwest, over to Montana and Wyoming, and then down through Utah and Colorado, slowly working our way back to the East Coast over a period of about 4 months. We took a flight back to New York City for a week, seeing Alex for a few days and staying in his place while he left the city for a wedding. Rudy got to ride the subway for the first time. While in New York, we went to Central Park, had dinner with good friends, and even went to a small underground jazz club in the village. Back in Oakland, Sharon's mom came out for a long weekend for a visit, so we took her to a great winery in nearby Napa Valley. Sadly, our time in Oakland came to an end, but we look forward to getting back to our adventures on the road. Our first stop out was our last park in California, which was Lassen Volcanic National Park. In 2021, the Dixie Fire raced through dense vegetation, dried by drought, until it had burned nearly 1 million acres. We could see where the fire burned, but regrowth was in full swing already. Lassen is known for its hydrothermal features, which include fumaroles, mud pots, and boiling pools. Lassen was kind of a warm-up to Yellowstone later in our trip. We ended up visiting 6 of the 9 national parks in California, so we plan on returning to get to Redwoods, Channel Island, and of course, Yosemite. Next, on to the Pacific Northwest.